You spend hours, maybe even days, learning something new, and then a week later, poof, it's just gone. It's super frustrating, and today, we're going to dig into the science of how to make learning actually stick. It really is the classic problem for anyone trying to learn. You read a book, you watch a lecture, and in that moment, you feel like you've got it. But then you try to pull that information out of your brain later, and it's just not there. The thing is, our brains are actually designed to forget stuff they think is unimportant. So the real trick is, how do we signal to our brains that, hey, this stuff is actually worth keeping? Well, it turns out there's a real science to this. And based on some fantastic research, we have identified 5 super practical evidence-based methods that directly fight against that forgetting curve. And these aren't just little hacks. They are powerful techniques for building real, lasting knowledge. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the power of timing with spaced repetition. Then we'll jump into how to strengthen your recall with practice testing. After that, we'll look at why teaching is this incredible secret weapon for learning, how to take notes that actually work for your brain, and finally, how to use feedback to look forward, not just back. First up, spaced repetition. This one is a game changer. The idea is so simple but so powerful. When you review information is just as important as if you review it at all. It's all about strategically fighting that natural decay of memory over time. So what does this look like in the real world? Well, instead of cramming everything into one night, you revisit the material at intervals that get longer and longer. So for example, you might learn something on day 1, check in with it again on day 3, then maybe a week later, and then 3 weeks after that. Every single time you review it at these spaced out moments, you're telling your brain, hey, this is important. And that memory gets stronger and more permanent. A pretty good rule of thumb is that the tougher the topic, the more you want to stretch out those gaps. But what's actually happening in our brains when we do this? Well, researcher Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa puts it this way. Every time you rehearse or review, you're strengthening the neural pathways for that memory. It's like paving a dirt road, making it smoother and faster to travel on. This process enhances something called the myelin sheath, which is basically insulation for your brain's wiring. And the result? It becomes way, way easier and faster to access that information when you need it. All right, technique number 2 is practice testing. Now, most of us think of tests as just a tool to measure what we've learned, right? A grade. But their real power, their secret power, is in building knowledge. This is all about making a huge shift from being a passive learner to an active one. This slide just lays it out so perfectly. Over on the left, you've got passive review. Rereading your notes, highlighting a textbook. It feels productive, but honestly, it often just gives you this false sense of confidence. But on the right, you have active recall. This is where you force your brain to actually pull the information out. Things like answering questions, solving problems, using flashcards, these are like a real workout for your memory. So the big payoff here is twofold. First, the simple act of trying to remember something makes that memory stronger and easier to find later on. And second, it's the ultimate diagnostic tool. It shines this huge spotlight on the exact things you don't know, telling you precisely where you need to focus your efforts next. No more guessing. Our third method might sound a little backwards at first. It's teaching to learn. Yeah, it turns out that one of the absolute best ways to really, truly master a concept is to try to explain it to somebody else. So why is this so effective? Well, think about it. To teach something, you can't just kind of know it. First, you have to really, truly understand it yourself. Then, you're forced to simplify it, to break it down into its most important parts. And finally, you have to actually explain it, finding the right words, maybe the right analogies. That whole process of structuring the info for another person just cements it in your own mind. And here is the secret weapon of this technique. Teaching instantly shows you where the holes are in your own knowledge. It uncovers what you thought you knew, but maybe didn't. If you start explaining something and you find yourself stumbling or using really vague language, boom, that's a signal. You've just found a weak spot you now know you need to go back and fix. On to our fourth technique, active note-taking. Let's be honest, for a lot of us, taking notes is just trying to write down everything we hear word for word. It's passive. The goal here is to turn that into an active process of thinking and engaging with the material. So how do we make our notes active? Well, by using a structure that forces your brain to work. So instead of just writing down sentences, try creating an outline to see how the ideas connect and stack up, or use a mind map to visually link different concepts together. You could even try a question-based format where you turn the main points into questions you then have to answer in your notes. All of these force you to process and organize the information, not just blindly copy it. And finally, our fifth technique is all about how we use feedback. This isn't just about getting a grade on something and moving on. It's about using that information to learn smarter and be way more targeted in the future. Tokuhama Espinosa calls this feed forward, and I just love that term. It totally reframes the whole idea. It shifts the focus away from beating yourself up about what you did wrong and moves it toward proactively planning how you're going to get better. It makes feedback something constructive, not just critical. This quote just nails it. After you get a result on a test or a project, don't just glance at the score. No, dig into the mistakes. Use that feedback to do a really honest checkup on your weak spots. That analysis, that becomes your treasure map for where to focus your energy next time. So there you have it, your complete learning toolkit. 5 really powerful research-backed strategies. Space out your reviews. Actively test yourself. Try teaching what you learned to someone else. Take notes that actually organize the information, and use feedback to feed forward into your next learning adventure. Look, these aren't just abstract ideas. They are real, practical tools you can start using literally today. And yeah, they work best when you combine them, but even just adding one of these to your routine can make a huge difference in how much you remember. So the question isn't really if they work, it's which one are you going to put into action first.